We thank the Most High God for this day, and today we're going to read the book of Esther. We're going to go through the history of Esther. Purim came in on Wednesday night. Wednesday night into Thursday during the day, we observe Purim. And what is Purim? Purim is a history in our lives that we see where the children of Israel, there was a wicked person that wanted to annihilate or have a genocide of the children of Israel. And that being said, we needed to, the Most High God had to step in order for us to be saved from the wicked one that wanted to destroy us and annihilate us, right? And as we get into the history, we will begin to see all of the things that are going on and all of the things that are happening. Thank you, sir. That's why I like you as my reader, my brother. Y'all might think that that's a light thing, but when you got someone that reads for you and knows how you think, it makes it that much easier. Yeah, you could start.
We're in the book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 1. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus, who reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 120 provinces. That in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the castle, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants. The army of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty, many days, even 180 days.
180 days. We talking about a banquet for over like a half a year. You're talking about a party for a half a year. This is, we don't even, when we think about a party, we think about, you know, having a nice 6-hour run. You might go, back in the days, you might go to an after party and then you're done. This guy kept the party going for 180 days. That's like a half a year. 127 provinces. This is, he's ruling from India all the way to Kush. That's modern day Ethiopia. This is a large distance that this guy is ruling, and his kingdom is wide, right? So when we think about the Persians and we think about the Medo-Persian Empire, we understand from history that in the book of Daniel it spoke about the vision that Daniel saw, and he saw the statue with the head of gold, and then the silver and the clay and all the things that came about after. So now we're down to the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Medo-Persian Empire begins with a man by the name of Cyrus. Cyrus was called the anointed of the Most High God. I believe in the book of Isaiah chapter 45, the Most High God speaks about Cyrus as being this anointed because Cyrus will return the children of Israel back to Jerusalem after the Babylonians took us into exile. Now the prophet Isaiah prophesied about Cyrus 200 years before he even came about. This was documented history. He spoke about Cyrus as being the anointed of the Most High God. So I got some notes here, and I just want to talk about the period of time that this empire began, or this power, or this rule began, unto where we're at in the history in the book of Esther. And I'll have my brother Chief Michael read it.
Cyrus rules around 550 BCE. Cyrus II, later known as Cyrus the Great, comes to power as king of Ashan and western Persians. Under his control of his Persians is united. He starts the Achaemenid dynasty.
The Achaemenid dynasty. So this is what his dynasty is called, the Achaemenid dynasty. and he begins it at 550 BCE. BCE stands for before the Common Era, right? So let us go.
In 550 BCE, Cyrus was attacked.
Cyrus was attacked 550. As he reigned, as he began his reign, he got attacked. Let's go.
King Astyages of Media attacked Cyrus.
Uh-huh.
During the fight, some of Astyages' men turn on their leader, and Cyrus becomes the victor. He goes on to defeat the Medes and conquers Lydia.
He conquers Lydia, which is Media, and that's how we know it as the Medo-Persian Empire, because some of the men turned against their king, and they came to Cyrus' side. He attacks them, he defeats them, and now he's in control of all of this. Let's go.
In 539 BCE, Cyrus captures Babylon.
He captures Babylon. Now, Babylon at this point, remember, Babylon was the head of gold. They were ruling for a period of time. Now they got weak. And now Cyrus, being powerful and coming up, he goes into Babylon, and he overcomes it. Let's go.
In 536 BCE, the prophecy about Cyrus. 200 years before Babylon is conquered, the prophet Isaiah has written of a great ruler named Cyrus who allows the children of Yisrael to rebuild the temple. When the scroll is read to Cyrus, he commands that the captive Israelites of Babylon be allowed to return to rebuild.
Most High called them his anointed. He allowed our forefathers to go back into Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Let's go.
Cyrus conquers more from 533 to 529 BCE. Cyrus continues to take over more lands in 533 BCE. He invades India. He later dies in battle in 529 BCE.
So he back then the mentality was I mean, I can't say it was much different because people do it more subtle today. Back then it was just done by force. They rolled up on your gates. And you're going to pay some taxes here, and you're going to adopt our ways. Now, you got people like Alexander that came along that said, all right, you could keep your religion, you could keep your way of living, but you fall under me. You know, and I'm going to name a few cities in here, Alexandria. And when y'all have babies, name them Alexander, and we good. That's why you got all through the Middle East and Egypt. In Egypt, you got a place called Alexandria. You go all out into India, you got places called Alexandria. Because Alexander left his mark everywhere. He allowed them to keep their religion, but in turn, he told them, listen, this is what you got to follow. And if you don't, then you die. Let's go.
In 529 BCE, the family line goes on. After the death of his father, Cambyses II rules. He conquers both Egypt and Cyprus, extending the empire even more. He dies in 522 BCE. He
dies in 522 BCE. So Cambyses was that was Cyrus's son, right? And what happened is that when he came into rule, he wasn't as charismatic as his father, right? And he had a brother, I believe his brother's name was Smarties. They said that he was assassinated. He assassinated his brother, right? And so that there wouldn't be no struggle over the kingdom. Right. So then he began to reign. Let us go.
In 521 BCE, Darius I reigns. He claims the throne, but Bardia, presumably Cambyses' brother, claims it too. Bardia is eventually defeated, and Darius becomes king of Persia.
And Darius becomes king of Persia. Let's go.
You want to continue with these?
Yeah, I want to contribute. I'm going to continue with these.
In 521 BCE, Darius divides the empire into provinces called satraps.
So that's what we read in the history. It said you see 127 provinces or satrapies, however you say, satrapies. This is divided into 127 because he did that so that he could have a better control of what was happening. All these people were like little rulers of all these little provinces, and they had to report back to Darius everything that was happening within these towns and within these cities. Let us go.
He links the empire by roads and has a common currency throughout. He also allows the Israelites to continue rebuilding their temple after disputes from neighboring areas are brought to his attention.
So he continues, he allows Israelites to continue to rebuild the temple, and he created, or he revamped, the royal road. which plays a very important part in this history, because there's a lot of messages that are being sent that have to get out in a period of time. And the Royal Road was created or was revamped by Darius the Great. Let us go.
At around 500 BCE, the Persian Empire consisted of 8,500,000 kilometers and had a population estimated at about 50 million.
That's a lot of people. They had an estimation of 50 million people in this empire. This is from Kush all the way to India. Now, I wish I would have did a slide show so I could show you the extent of his kingdom, but it was very large. Let us go.
In 499 BCE, Lydia began to rebel. Lydia joins Persia after being conquered by Cyrus in 546 BCE, but they rebel in 499. Darius puts down the rebellion. So, you know, the Median Empire want to be great again, but Darius puts down that revolt. Let us go. The Persian Wars from 490 to 479 BCE. Right. The Greeks and the Persians battled for territory for several years. Sometimes the Persians win, sometimes the Greeks win. In 485 BCE, Darius died. This continues the prophecy of Daniel. The head of gold, the arms and the chest of silver, right? And then now we getting down to what? Part clay, part iron, part clay. You know, this is the Alexander the Great, and this is the Greek Empire that's coming on the rise. So this is where the Persian Wars begin. From 490 to 479 BCE is when we begin to see that the Greeks is beginning to get force or get power within the earth. And they, you know, they don't want to be pushed around, because Persia, the Median Persian Empire, they trying to expand. So they going all into Europe. They going all into places they never been to before. So the Greeks are not going for it. And this begins the Persian Wars from 490 to 479. Let's go. Xerxes the First begins to rule in 485 BCE. Xerxes the First is Ahasuerus. So this is the same person. Let's go. Xerxes the First comes to power after the death of Darius. He continues the war with Greece. The Persians burn Athens in 480 but are defeated at Salamis the following year when the fleet sinks. Xerxes is assassinated in 465. Xerxes is assassinated in 465. This is Ahasuerus, right? So we're giving you a part in history. I'm moving forward, right, past the history to show you what's been going on. So within these wars, right, or within the conflict between the Persians, the Median Persian Empire, and the Greeks, Xerxes dies. Eventually he dies. Let us go. The major languages spoken by the people that were under the Persian rule at that time were Persian, Aramaic, Akkadian, Median, Greek, Elamite, and Sumerian. So people that spoke many languages. In America, we're pushed only to speak English. When you go to Europe, people speak many languages. You go to Europe, they speak English, German, you know, French. People are very educated. They speak Spanish. So this is no different back then. Since he covered all these areas, they had to know all these languages. And they spoke all of these languages. They had to know how to do this. Now let us go back to the Tanakh. So just giving you a background of what's happening and what's going on here. So he threw a banquet for 180 days, which is half of a year. And let us go. Verse 5. And when these days were fulfilled, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the castle, both great and small, 7 days, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So, because he hosted this party from all these people that came from all over his kingdom, now he hosted a party for 7 days from just his princes and the people that were right there in his palace. Right? So, y'all, we hosted these people. They went back home. Now we gonna party and we gonna have a good time for 7 days. Let us go. There were hangings of white, fine cotton, and blue, bordered with cords of fine linen and purple. Upon silver rods and pillars of marble, the couches were of gold and silver. Upon a pavement of green and white and shell and onyx marble. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the bounty of the king. We talking about hangings of, you sisters know what's the best
hangings and curtains and no cheap drapery. I'm talking about stuff that's intertwined with gold, marble floors, you know, cups that were diverse one from another, because he conquered a lot of places. He got artistry and art from all these different places. And besides that, people were giving him gifts all the time.
Right.
So when all these people came, they didn't come empty-handed. When they came to party, they didn't come with their hands empty. They came bearing gifts. So he had diverse things from all these lands, and he allowed his people that lived with him to enjoy all the amenities that he had within his court and within his temple. He said, we're going to have fun. He said, we're going to have us some good wine. He said they had the king's wine. You know the king's wine was in, what was that? Wild Irish Rose? King's wine wasn't none of that stuff. That stuff that we drink. Not even Manischewitz. That's that top shelf stuff. Now, I'm not a drinker, so I don't know what's top shelf wine. But I could imagine that there's some stuff out here that's been aged for so long that you paying $200 a bottle, $300 a bottle. That's the king's wine. Yeah. $1,000, you said? $1,000 a bottle. You know, so he allowed the people to enjoy of the best of the kingdom and for them to rejoice in this time. Let us go.
Verse 8. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure.
Listen, don't get mad at anybody. Just drink as much as you want to and do what you want to do. Now, I have something here where it speaks about Herodotus on Persia and the Persians. And what did he say about they drinking?
He said they are very fond of wine.
This is Herodotus. Now, Herodotus was a Greek philosopher, right? And this is what he said about the Persians and their drinking and their habits. What does it say?
They are very fond of wine and drink it in large quantities.
They drink it in large quantities. So most of their feasts consist of wine. Let us go.
To vomit or obey natural cause in the presence of another is forbidden among them.
To
Such
vomit,
are their customs
that
in
means
these matters.
Before you drink with us, be able to drink.
Right.
Because to vomit in front of us is like a shame.
Right.
Don't come before us and start
It still is.
hurling like, nah, you can't.
You
You can't hang with us. Yes, this is shameful, man. You gotta go. So they didn't allow that amongst them. And to go to the bathroom, that meant that you couldn't hold it either. So when you come amongst us, be ready to hold your liquor.
Right.
Right? They were high on this. Let's go.
It is also their general practice to deliberate upon affairs of weight when they are drunk, and when on the morrow, when they are sober, the decision to which they came the night before is put before them by the master of the house, in which it was made, and if it is then approved of, they act on it. If not, they set it aside. So this is crazy. Most people tell you, make a decision with a sober mind. Am I right or wrong? Right.
They did the opposite. They said, listen, we're going to make decisions of power while we're drunk. But we call alcohol truth serum. What they said how the saying go? It speaks a sober mind. So most people, when they drunk, they call it liquid courage, because you get the courage to say what you need, what you've been wanting to say. Well, I never liked you anyway. Yeah, the people get drunk and they begin to talk. So they said, they use that they probably observe people and say, people speak the truth when they drunk. So let's get you drunk first, make this decision, but we're going to wake up in the morning, and if you have the same decision with your sober mind, then we know that you're speaking your true mind, because you're speaking it while you're drunk and you're speaking it while you're sober. Right. So that's how they took care of their affairs. Let's go. Sometimes, however, they are sober at their first deliberation, but in this case, they always reconsider the matter under the influence. Oh man, so sometimes they come with a sober mind. Yeah, I want to buy this plot of land from you or whatever. So okay, let's drink on that. Pull out the whiskey. Give me the honey jack. Let's knock this out. Make sure they see you stumbling a little. Don't throw up now. Stay strong. All right, now he's stumbling a little. All right. Now, do you really want to buy this plot of land? No. I don't. Then it's no good. That's how they took care of their affairs. I'm not telling us to do that, but that's how they did it. Let's go.
Back to the portion, verse 9. Verse 9. Also, Vashti the Queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus.
So, she made a feast in the royal house, which belonged to her ish, the king. She made a feast with all the women. Let us go.
On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Bezetta, Harbona, Bigda, Abagda, Zetar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that ministered in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal.
With the crown royal.
To show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on.
So, King Ahasuerus was like, you know, I showed y'all all the greatness of my kingdom.
Right.
But I got something that none of y'all could ever have. And I'm going to break out my most precious jewel, which is the queen of the Medo-Persian Empire. Now, when I break her out, you guys could look, but you can't touch. Right? So, he commands her to come with the crown royal on her head. Now, in the Midrash or Midrashic tradition, they have a different explanation as to how they said that she was supposed to show up before the men. And I'm going to have my brother Chief Mekwa, I didn't send him this part of the notes, but I'm going to have him read it. Start from the top and see what it says.
This thing just changed. How you did that?
He's technologically challenged. He's got his
That's a fact. Vashti is seen by the Babylonian rabbis. The Babylonian rabbis tend to cast Vashti in an extremely negative light, as wicked, a Jew hater, and wanton. They comment on Esther chapter 1 verse 9. In addition, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for women in the royal palace of King Ahasuerus. That Vashti held her banquet in the royal palace of King Ahasuerus, a place meant for men and not in the natural venue for such an event.
So it's basically saying that the rabbis that came out of Babylon hated on Vashti. They said she was evil, she was wicked. They just looked down on her. Now the book don't say that, but let's see what that says.
They learned from this that Vashti had licentious intent when she organized her banquet.
That's like she wanted to do all types of debauchery and all types of stuff where she's sleeping with different men and women. The women in the harem are having all types of affairs with other men. This is what they come up from this. Now this don't say that, but that's what they saying in Midrashic tradition. Let's go.
Just like her husband Ahasuerus, who later summoned her to appear before the men. The rabbis cite the immoral intent of each as an example of the popular saying, he with gourds and his wife with cucumbers. In other words, the husband and the wife are alike, both acting the same manner.
Right, both acting as they both ain't no good. Let's go.
Esther 1:10 records on the 7th day when the king was
all right, this is the one I want you to pay attention to. Let's go.
On which the rabbis observed that the 7th day of Ahasuerus' banquet was also the 7th day of the week, that is the Shabbat.
So they come up with the 7th day was the banquet was the Shabbat day. That's what they saying. It doesn't say here, it just says a 7th day, right? From when the banquet began. The banquet could have began at any time. And they just counting 7 days. There was a 7-day process of them doing this. Let's go.
When the Israelites eat and drink on the Shabbat, they utter words of Torah and praises to God. But when the non-Jewish peoples eat and drink on this day, they begin with indecent talk. So
they're formulating all this stuff from just this history that doesn't say that. But they saying that, you know, when Israelites eat and drink on Shabbat, they talk Torah. But other people do not. They talk whatever they want to talk. Let us go.
And so it was the banquet of Ahasuerus where an argument erupted among the men.
So they saying this happened on the 7th day. An argument erupted among the men. Among all the men that he had there. Let's go.
Some said the Median women are the fairest.
Some said the Median women are the most beautiful women. The others said what?
While others claim Persian women are the fairest.
The others said Persian women are the fairest. Let's go.
Ahasuerus replied to them, the vessel that I use, that is his wife, is neither Mede nor Persian, but Chaldean.
Now, I don't know where they got that from, this history, that she was Babylonian, but Esther is Babylonian. Is what they said, that she's Babylonian. So they said, he said the vessel that I drink out of. And you could take it any way you want to take that. But he said the vessel that he drank out of, right, is the fairest among all the women. Let's go.
And then he asked, do you want to see her?
And he posted to him, do you want to see whether or not she's the fairest among them all? Let's go.
They told him yes.
They said yes.
But only if she's naked.
But only if she's naked. Now, how do you get all that from, read verse 9 again?
Also, Vashti the Queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus.
On the verse 10.
On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehumam, Beseta, Harbona, Bigda, Abakta, Zetar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that ministered in the presence of Ahasuerus.
These were eunuchs.
To bring Vashti the Queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, but she was fair to look at. How
do you get naked and come before the people naked and all that stuff? That's somebody made up that story, right? This has nothing to do with what the history is showing. But I like to show you other things to see how people think and how people write up the history and what they add to it, what they diminish from it. Let's keep reading.
Back to the portion.
Back to the portion.
Verse 11.
Verse 11.
To bring Vashti the Queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on.
She was beautiful to look on. Let's go.
But the Queen Vashti refused to come at the
She refused to come. Let's go.
By the chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him.
He sobered up real quick. He said, what? She won't come? I called her. Did you tell her that I called her personally? I said, yeah, king, but she just refusing to come. So now his anger was through the roof. Let's go.
Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Karshina, Shetar, Amata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom.
Sat first in the kingdom. So these are his advisors, right? And now they saw his face. Now they have to come up with something because the king can't be disrespected. Let us go.
What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law? For as much as she have not done the bidding of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. By the chamberlains.
So this is his men telling him, listen, what shall we do unto her by law? So let's look into the book of the Persians or the Medes, whatever laws that they have set up, and then we determine from there what should be done to her. Let us go.
And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the peoples that are in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus.
Man, this thing is not going to only affect your house.
Right.
It's going to affect my house because like he said, they could use reference. Right? Vashti disrespected Ahasuerus and nothing happened to her. So you going to jump? No. You greater than the king? So they was like, nah, we got to stop this right now, king. Because we don't want rebellions throughout all of our homes. Let us go.
For this deed of the queen will come abroad unto all women to make their husbands contemptible in their eyes. When it will be said, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not.
Yeah, they're going to be contemptible. Like, you can't tell me that. You're going to be despicable in mind. You can't tell me nothing. When he told her to come, she didn't come. So what you telling me? You don't run nothing. Vashti running. Let's go.
And this day will the princesses of Persia and Media who have heard of the deed of the queen say the like unto all the king's princes. So will there arise enough contempt and wrath, if it please the king. Let there go forth a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it not be altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and that the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she.
You see, this is something that affected the whole kingdom. So when they put this law together, it wasn't only because they didn't like Vashti, it's because she violated. So they had to make a rule so that a power shift didn't happen. Like today. Let us go.
And when the king's, verse 20, and when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his kingdom, great though it be, all the wives will give to their husbands honor, both to great and small.
I'm still the king of my castle.
Right.
That's what basically it is. The man is still the king of his castle. Now the Most High God told us that he gave us a woman as a helpmeet. Now a helpmeet it's a person. Now, your wife could be greater than you when it comes to certain things, and you have to acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the man. He's the decision maker because God looks at him first. God judges him first because he's the one who is the head of the house. He's responsible. Your wife could be the smartest person in the world, but at the end of the day, the man is the one that's responsible for that house. Let us go.
And the word pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the word of Memucan, for he sent letters into all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and speak according to the language of his people.
They wrote it in all the languages that I told you they spoke before, so that everyone would understand that man bear rules in his house. And the man is the king of his castle. Let's go.
Chapter 2. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was assuaged, he remembered Vashti, and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be sought for the king young virgins fair to look on, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the castle, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hagar, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women. And let their ointments be given them, and let the maiden that pleaseth the king be a queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so.
So now some time go past. He's sober. He's thinking about, because the king don't have a lack of women. Well, he got a harem full of women.
Right.
That's reality. So that part of his life is taken care of. So it's not about that. Right? Vashti is the queen. Every woman ain't queen material. Every woman is not queen material. So when he's sitting down and he's thinking, he's starting to miss Vashti. That's my baby. He started getting lovesick and twisting and turning, and they listening to him and talking about, I don't care what nobody say, I'm going to reverse that judgment. They said, no. We got to do something here to alleviate this man from his love sickness.
Right.
So now what they did, his officers and his princes said, we're going to make a beauty pageant.
Right.
But this beauty pageant is going to be to select the next queen of Persia. So now they're going to seek out young maidens from all the towns, all the provinces, and bring them in so that to see which one the king chooses to be the next queen of Persia. Let us go.
Verse 5.
And the other thing is, and I say this all the time, a great poet, and I always talk about this poet, right, by the name of Too Short. Short Dog. And it's, you know, a lot of the music is crazy, but he did say one thing that's very true, right? If you can't make a woman that's a harlot a housewife. You can't. Every woman is not going to be a queen. Every woman is not going to be a queen. There's certain women. That's what he said, Tease. That's what he said. She asked her, did he say that? Yeah, that's what he said. But you can't. You got to know who you obtaining and who you taking into your bosom and who you're going to elevate to that position.
Right.
Because every woman is not going to be that material. And that's just realistically speaking. We could sometimes look at things and we want to say like, oh, you know, you shouldn't talk like that. Chief Uzziel, you know what you're doing is, no, but that's reality. He missed his queen. Vashti was queen material. She violated because she forsook his word. But now he's missing her. He has no lack of woman. He could get a woman. That's the point that I want you to know. He could get a woman. But that wasn't what he was missing. A wife or nashim, as some men have, it's a different caliber. Different quality. That's reality. I mean, so if you put yourself in the value of or you lower yourself to that value, then that's how you're going to be treated. But if you value yourself, you're going to be treated as a queen. And people are going to see queen qualities. Let us go.
Verse 5. There was a certain Yehudite in Shushan the castle, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives that had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Yehuda, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away.
So now, when we see the word Jew here, right? And my brother said Yehudite, which is correct, because when you read it in the Hebrew, it says Yehudi, I believe. So what happens is, this is the southern kingdom of Israel was the last to go into captivity, right? So what happened is when we got taken into Babylon, Jeconiah got taken into Babylon. Everybody that lived in that region was known as Jews or Yehudi, right? So when they were taken, Benjamites, Levites, and Judites was known as Jews. Right. So that's why when you see it written in the history, it says Jews, and then it's speaking about a Benjamite, is because everybody from that southern kingdom was known as Judites or Jews. Right. Right? They fell under that category. Let us go, so that you won't be confused.
And he brought, verse 7, he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther.
That is Esther.
His uncle's daughter, but she had neither father nor mother, and the maiden was of beautiful form and fair to look on. And when her father and her mother were dead, Mordecai took her for his own daughter.
It says she was a beautiful form, man. Caucasians don't come like that.
Form.
They don't come like that. You see what you call black women, or what they call, what you want to say, Spanish or Puerto Rican or Dominican or whatever. They all you Israel. Right. You Israel. Right. You got that blood running in you, just that you got a little bit more of that Espanol sangre in your vein, but it don't matter. You still Israel. You Israel. And that's why you come and you shapely, like it says Esther is. It said a goodly form. Right. They don't come like that. They go get injections. They go get stuff boosted up. You come like that. You package like that. You come out the womb like, oh boy, I got to get my shotgun. You see your daughter start growing up, you be like, yeah, I got to get my shotgun and I got to get my guns ready, because this is going to be a problem right here. Because we shape like that. That's how we come. That's how we look, right? So it says she was beautiful to look on, and he was raising her up. Now that was his cousin. That wasn't his niece. It wasn't his daughter. It was his cousin. It was his uncle's daughter, right? So he's raising her up as her daughter. He adopted her and took her as his own. Now we said, well, how could he have a cousin that's so young? Because I got cousins that I'm old enough to be their father. Because men didn't stop having babies, that's why. Women come to a time where they might stop because, you know, certain things happen to you and you can't bear babies no more. Men kept having babies. So that meant that men had most likely more than one. And they kept having babies. Or men could continue to have babies. My grandfather has a set of kids that my mother could be their mother. She's old enough to be his second set of kids' mother. And they are all, most of them are younger than me. But they're my aunts and my uncles. So those cousins that they still having, they still having babies and that are 2 and 3 and 1 year old, guess what they are to me? My cousins, but I'm old enough to be their father. Some of them old enough to be their grandparent. So goes and figures. You know, you figure that type of stuff, but if you sit down and try to bust your brain, how is that? You try to psychoanalyze the Tanakh, you get lost. Yeah, you get lost, because these things were happening. Men were having babies at an old age. Let's go.
Verse 8. So it came to pass when the King's Commandment and his decree was published, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the castle, To the custody of Hegai, that Esther was taken into the king's house. To the custody of Hegai, keeper of the woman. And the maiden pleased him. And she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her her ointments with her portions, and the 7 maidens who were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he advanced her and her maidens to the best place in the house of the women. Esther had not made known her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not tell it. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what would become of her.
So Esther won favor in the house of the women, and she was elevated to the best position. As Israel, that's how we supposed to be. When we go to our places when we go to our places where we work, we're supposed to be those people that people look at and say, man, that's a righteous person. And people look at you and you're trustworthy. That's how Esther came across. She didn't come across as a nasty young daughter with an attitude or anything like that. She came across as a goodly person, right? So that she was elevated to the best position in the house. That's how we supposed to be. That's how when we come across people, people are supposed to look at us as a godly people, as a people that do that which is right all the time. Not that you at your job and you the person who steals the most, you taking stuff and then they got you on camera and found employees stealing, and then you go, you get fired on a bad note. That's not how you're supposed to be.
Get fired on your day off.
Yeah, get fired on your day off. We supposed to keep up that righteousness at all times so that we could bring forth. You see, when people get to know an Israelite, they supposed to get to know a great good. A good person, not a bad person. They're supposed to be a blessing, like my brother said. When you come across people, you're supposed to be a blessing to them. Not a curse, not when they see you, man, I wish he wasn't here. I wish he wasn't here. Because you gossip, you talk, you do this, you do that. And you can't stop talking, you can't stop gossiping, you can't stop doing those things. You're supposed to be a great good. A blessing to the people. Let us go.
Verse 12. Now when the turn of every maiden was come to go into King Ahasuerus, after that it had been done to her, according to the law for the women, 12 months for so were the days of their anointing accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other ointments of the women. When then the one maiden came unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house.
So these girls, because these girls work, so they, they might develop some bunions, some callus and stuff like that. They marinated in some oils for 12 months. Sit down, get in some spices and let that stuff get in your pores, and because you're not just gonna come before the king any old how.
Right.
You know what I mean? Grow out your nails, clean up underneath there. Do the stuff that you women like doing. What you think that doing your nails and putting on makeup and all that stuff is new? That stuff is not new. It's been here. When you look back in Egypt, all the way back in Egypt, the women were wearing makeup and they was wearing weaves. Yes. I went to the Metropolitan Museum of History in the city, and they had a weave. They had a weave. I was like, they got a weave? They had weaves with, and they doing better than the sisters do today. They had gold in their weaves. Gold all in it. I said, oh goodness gracious. That was really doing it up. But you got to know history, and they put on makeup. So all these women were doing different things, right? They were sitting in spices, sitting in oils, doing all these things because it wasn't a rush thing for the king to go into a woman, because it wasn't about just going into a woman. And this is the thing that we got to understand. It was about finding a queen so that could sit next to him as a queen, and so that could be recognized as a queen, because for women, he had no lack of that. He had women. Let us go.
In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women.
Right, these are the women, all the women that came. They went in the evening to the king, and in the morning she returned unto the harem. Let's go.
To the custody of Shaashgaz, the king's chamberlain, who kept the concubine.
He kept the concubines. All right, let's go.
She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and she was called by name.
Now, these women that came in, they weren't free to go back out there.
Right.
These women were the king. These women belonged to the king. They weren't free. You wasn't going to, after she spent the night with the king, he kicks her out, and then another man could have her. It wasn't like that. It was not like that. You couldn't have something that the king already had. So she went into the house, into the harem, where all the women were, and that's where she stayed. Until the king desired her again, and he called her up and said, bring so and so and so back to me. Let us go.
Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go into the king, she required nothing but what he got at King's Chamberlain to keep up the woman appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house, royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tevet, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti.
Oh man, great moment. Esther became queen of the whole Medo-Persian Empire. And she required nothing except what the chamberlain, the keeper of the house, gave her. That means that her beauty spoke for itself. She didn't need to do all the other stuff. She didn't need to do all that other stuff. She was beautiful just by the way that she was made by God, just like most of our women are. It's a good. It says that we don't age the way other people age. I went to redo my passport. Woman told me, she said, yeah. She looked at my old passport 10 years ago, and then she looked at, she said, oh, you still look the same. I said, yeah, just a little bit of gray, you know what I mean? Just a little bit of gray. You know what I mean? Just a little extra gray, that's all. She was like, oh, you still look the same. You know, young girl telling me all that. So I mean, you just a little, you know, just a little. Try to act all bashful. Like Shy Brother from the Far Hop. Let's go.
Verse 18. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esthers Feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the bounty of the king.
Oh man, he was happy again. Vashti is in the back of his mind. And now he got Esther. Esther made him happy. And now back to normal, to the normal presentation. Let's go.
And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, and Mordecai sat in the king's gate, Esther had not yet made known her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up with him. In those days while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigtan and Teresh, of those that kept the door, were wroth, and sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing became known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther told the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, and it was found so to be, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king.
So Mordecai told Esther not to tell her nationality, right? And she listened. That's when she was living in his house. Although she was queen of Persia, of that empire, she still listened to what her adopted father told her. So Mordecai, being one of the men, or one of the officers, some say that he was like a rabbi or something. That the book don't say that, but it says that he was a officer of high rank, and he was sitting by the gate, right? And he heard two men plotting to King Ahasuerus. But now technically Ahasuerus is his son-in-law.
Right.
Let's go.
Chapter 3. After these things, did King Ahasuerus promote Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. So
now, after all these things happen, he promotes this man Haman, right, to be basically his right-hand man. Let us go.
And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed down and prostrated themselves before Haman.
All the king's servants bowed down before Haman. Let's go. Let's see what.
For the king had so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai bowed not down, nor prostrated himself before him.
Mordecai said, I'm not bowing down before no man. I'm not bowing down before him. He refused to do it. Let's go.
Then the king's servants that were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment?
These are the people that we have in the midst of us sometimes. The gas masters, the people that go back and forth, that take messages. It was back then just like it is today, because you're going to see what they're going to do. Let's go. Now, Haman had no idea of what Mordecai was doing. Mordecai was probably laying in the cut. Haman probably couldn't see him. But somebody brought it up to Haman's attention that there's a guy out there that doesn't bow down to you. And the king said that everyone has to bow down to you. Let's go.
Now it came to pass when they spoke daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. But he had told him that he was a Judite.
He said he was a Judite. Let's go.
And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not down, nor prostrated himself before him, then was Haman full of wrath.
He was full of wrath. But that's ego.
Right.
That's ego. Because ego is what moves you to feel that way. Right? That someone has to bow down before you. Ego is what puts you in that position. Because whether someone, if you got 99 people bowing down to you and one out of the 99 is not bowing down, you know, one out of the 100 is not bowing down to you, and you got 99 bowing down, then what is your problem? Your ego is, and we're going to begin to see his ego more and more as the story develops. Let's go.
But it seemed contemptible in his eyes to lay hands on Mordecai alone.
It seemed too easy, right? It seemed just, it was, no, that's too easy. Let's go.
But they had made known to him the people of Mordecai, wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Judites that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
So because one man didn't bow down to you, you want to destroy all his people. That shows you the hatred of people and how people operate and what ego will do to you. Ego is not supposed to be the thing, our factor that goes before us. Humble, meek and humble is the way. That's how you're supposed to be. But this guy, obviously, he's never heard any of the wisdom of Solomon, and he doesn't care about the wisdom of Solomon. Let us go.
In the first month, which is the month Aviv, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Purim, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month to the 12th month, which is the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the
Now he's the right-hand man of the king, so he got the king's ear. Let's go.
In all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from those of every people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it profiteth not the king to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those that have the charge of the king's business to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the Hebrews' enemy. Man, the king don't know about it. He don't know what's going to.
That's how you feel? Okay. You saying they against me? I trust you. Right? But his own ego and his own wickedness and the problem that he had with one man, one person, he wanted to take it out on the whole nation. So now the king gives him the signet ring and said, write whatever you got to write. Put my signet ring, my stamp on it, and it's good as gold. Let us go.
And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee.
Said, whatever seemeth good to thee, because you my right-hand man, and I trust you. Let's go.
Then there were the king's scribes called in the first month on the 13th day thereof, and it was written according to all that Haman commanded unto the king's satraps and to the governors that were over every province, and to the princes of every people, to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and it was sealed with the king's ring.
In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, so it was an official letter. Let's go.
And letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all Judites, both young and old, little children and women in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing to be given out for a decree in every province was to be published unto all the peoples that they should be ready against that day. The post went forth in haste by the king's commandment, and the decree was given out in Shushan the castle. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed.
Can you read about the royal road? Now the royal road was very important in this time. And remember I told you that Darius the king, or Darius was the one that revamped it and made it operational again. And this is what we read about the royal road.
The royal road was an ancient highway, reorganized and rebuilt by the Persian king Cyrus the Great, Darius the First, of the first Achaemenid Persian Empire in the 5th century BC. Darius built the road to facilitate rapid communication throughout his very large empire, from Susa to Sardis. Mounted couriers could travel 1,677 miles in 7 days. The journey from Susa to Sardis took 90 days on foot.
90 days on foot.
The Greek historian Herodotus wrote, "There was nothing in the world that travels faster than these Persian couriers." Herodotus is praised for these messengers. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Was inscribed on the James Farley Post Office in New York and is sometimes thought of as the United States Postal Service creed.
Right, so you know the United States Postal Service creed is through rain, sleet, or snow, we still deliver. I don't think that's true. I think sometimes they miss, but you know, they miss sometimes through snow. They getting lazy now, you know, but we got this royal road was essential to get messages out. And something that took 90 days on foot, like a travel that took 90 days on feet, it only took them 7 days on their royal steeds and on their horses. Wow. So this was important for them to get messages out to all the languages and to all the provinces as to what was going to happen. And this was going to be the annihilation of the nation within the empire. Let's go.
Chapter 4, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Now when Mordecai knew all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And he came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Judites, and fasting, and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and
Now,
ashes.
if you haven't noticed yet, the book of Esther is one of the books in the Tanakh that never mentions the name of the Most High. But putting on sackcloth and mourning and fasting is definitely a godly move, because that's the way that we attract attention to the Creator. So when we put on sackcloth and we mourn and we do all these things, that's how we attract the attention of the Creator of heaven and earth. And that's godly in itself. So once he heard what was going to happen, he went and he did the first thing that he knew was right. Was to get the attention of Yah. So he went out into the city and he cried loud so that everybody would know that this is a great and an awful day before the Most High God. And everybody should know what is about ready to happen, or what they perceive to do to the nation of Israel. Let's go.
Verse 4. And Esther's maidens and her chamberlains came in and told her, and the queen was exceedingly pained.
So you know, they telling her, listen, your uncle is outside with his clothes all torn, and he got sackcloth on, and he got ashes on his head. Like, what's going on? Like, we don't know what's going on with him. Now remember, Esther's in the palace. She hasn't heard of the decree. She doesn't know what's happening because the decree went out. It doesn't affect the people in the palace. So she's not understanding why he's walking around in that manner. Let's go.
And she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take his sackcloth from off him, but he accepted it not.
He accepted it now. She sent him some fresh new clothes, and he said, no, I don't want that. Let's go.
Then called Esther for Hattat, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and charged him to go to Mordecai to know what this was and why it was. So Hattat went forth to Mordecai into the broad place of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and the exact sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Judites to destroy them. Also he gave them a copy. He gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given out in Shushan, to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, to make supplication unto him, to make request before him for her people.
So here it is. Now these guys that work around the queen and the women, these guys are eunuchs. You don't have no guy operating properly working around your women. That the kings didn't do that back then. They were smart enough to know we got enough eunuchs here, and they're gonna protect the women, because they not operating like normal men operate. You know, so you don't keep regular men around your women, because some things is gonna happen. Right? And you don't want that to happen. So this man that is being sent forth to Mordecai, he is a eunuch, and he's getting all the information, and now Esther is going to know what's happening and why Mordecai is acting the way that he's acting. Let us go.
And Hattat came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke unto Hatak and gave him a message unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law for him, that he be put to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days.
She hasn't been before the king 30 days. Imagine not being around your husband for 30 days. The complaints that a man will get. Oh, and she was the queen, but he had to take, and he had to mind the affairs of a whole empire. So the whole empire was under his care. So her concern is, listen, I get what Mordecai is saying, but I just can't pop up in front of the king.
Right.
Because if I pop up in front of him and he don't hold down that scepter, then it's off of my head. Because that's the rules of the Persians. So she's concerned about her safety and what might happen to her. But let's see what the history says.
And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai bade them return answer unto Esther. Think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house, more than all the Judites. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then will relief and deliverance arise to the Judites from another place. But thou and thy father's house will perish. And who knoweth whether thou art not come to royal estate for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return answer unto Mordecai. Go, gather together all the Judites that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast in like manner, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish,
I perish. So Mordecai told her, listen, you're thinking too selfishly. You're thinking about what's going to happen to you. Sometimes when we live in life and when we're doing certain things, you have to make a sacrifice so that the people that come behind you could benefit from that sacrifice. People have made sacrifices. So he's telling her, listen, you think that you're safe in that house. He said, but you and your father's house going to be wiped off the face of the earth. He said, the Most High God will find somebody else to do his bidding. He said, but perhaps you were put in that position. Yes. You were put in that position for this exact moment. So you have to consider that. Right? And he could speak to her. Why? Because she respected him. She didn't say, you just my cousin. I don't want to hear what you got to say. When someone is older than you, when someone been around longer than you, when they giving you advice and when they giving you wisdom, it's smart for you to take it. But now, he was telling her as a father, listen, this is what's going on and this is what you must do. But if you don't do it, God is going to put somebody else there. This is your test. Don't allow your ego or your fear to overtake you. Sometimes fear overtakes you, you know. But you know, fear is part of life. But you got to overcome fear, because if you don't overcome fear, you can't begin to win or to live. You have to overcome fear. What do you think people who make decisions to go out and somebody who bought a building or did something, you might be scared of, oh, I'm going to pay the bills. Oh, am I going to do this? Oh, I'm going to. But if you never do it, you will never know if you can manage it or not. So fear holds us back and don't allow us to succeed. God didn't make us a fear. God said fear him, but he don't say fear life. Now, I'm not telling you to do stuff, get on bungee jump. I'm not telling you to do all that stuff. You seen the guy that was bungee jumping in the cruise liner the other day, and the thing snapped, and he fell like 20 feet. I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm talking about in life, you can't be afraid to take chances. Because when you take chances, that's when you realize that whether or not you got the testicular fortitude to move forward and to do certain things. That's why some people are more successful than others, because they're not afraid of failure. Failure is part of life too. So you might go into something and you might fail the first time, but when you go into it the second time, you're going with more knowledge and understanding of what not to do and what to do. Yeah. you go into something, into a business or something like that, if you got doubt in your mind, you might as well stay out of it. You can't have doubt. Everybody who's become successful in life is the level of confidence that they have and a lack of fear that causes you to get to the position, because you got to grab the opportunity while it's there. Because if you hesitate, in Spanish we have this saying, el que parpadea pierde. That means the one who hesitates loses, right? If you hesitate, you lose. You can't hesitate. You got to grab it when it's there for you to take it. So you can't be afraid to succeed. Success is determined by how hard you go and you pursue something. So if you think you're wasting your life and you know there's something that you know how to do, pursue it. Don't waste your life. Pursue it and go after it. Don't be satisfied with just whatever, whatever you position you put yourself in, right? But go and pursue and grab your goals. And if you go and pursue it, then God will bless you. Let us go.
So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the entrance of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So she overcame her fear. She was afraid of dying. But when she came there, she lit up the king's, oh man, there go my baby. Moving on down the line. Oh man, she looking beautiful. She got that red dress. She got them high heels and some of that sweet perfume. Sure look good on you. Yeah, my. Sure look good tonight, Esther. So when she came down, you know, he taking care of affairs. He see his baby. You think he want her to die now? Hold that scepter out. What you want, baby? What's going on? Everything good? Let's go. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter.
Ah, man, she bowed down, touched the top of the scepter, and she went through the whole thing. Let's go.
Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther?
What wilt thou? Now listen to his game. Let's go.
For whatever thou request.
Well, whatever you want, baby. What you want?
Even to half of the kingdom.
Even to half of my kingdom. You want, how many provinces you want? You want 60-something provinces?
It shall be given.
It shall be given to you, baby. Let's go.
And Esther said, if it seem good unto the king.
He said, if it seem good to you, king, because I know you're taking care of your affairs, and I kind of came abruptly into the middle of what you were doing. I'm adding, you know, let's go.
Let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for
so let you and your right-hand man come to the banquet that I prepared for you, Ish. Let's go.
Then the king said, cause Haman to make haste, that it may be done as Esther hath said.
Let's go.
So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, whatever thou
wine again, remember, they drink wine. We understand that from them. Let's go.
Whatever thy petition, it shall be granted thee. And whatever thy request, even to half of the kingdom, shall be performed. He said, man, Esther made him so happy. So whatever your petition is, it shall be granted to you, Esther. Let's go. Then answered Esther and said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition, and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said.
Look, if you really mean that, then I need you to come back again tomorrow. I'm going to have another banquet, and then I'm going to tell you what's really on my mind. Let's go.
Then went Haman forth that day joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, Haman was filled with wrath against Mordecai. So Haman was happy. She invited me, and she wanted me to come back tomorrow. And as soon as he saw Mordecai, I hate that so-and-so, and I wish that's your ego. You just been invited to a place of, put in a place of honor, and you worried about this man on the bottom of the pole, and you worried about him. But that's your ego, and that we see the Most High all in this book, because his own ego is going to work against him. Let us go. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself and went home. And he sent and fetched his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman recounted unto him the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and everything as to how the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king.
Now who does that? You call your friends over to tell them how much money you got, to tell them how many cars you got, to tell them about all the good things that happen. Who does that? You call your friends over to do that? That's ego. Who does it? That's what he did. That's what it said that he did. He called his friends over, his wife and his children, to tell them how great his life is. Let us go.
Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the Queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet.
Oh man, it was only me. She only let me come there. Just me and the king. Y'all will never get that opportunity. It's only me. Let's go.
And tomorrow also am I invited.
And guess what? Tomorrow I'm invited to the second banquet. Nobody else is invited, just me and the king. Let's go.
Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Hebrew sitting at the king's gate.
I can't live right, because this, although I've been invited to the king's palace, to the queen's banquet, this guy right here is driving me crazy. This explains the mentality of a narcissist person,
right,
of a narcissistic person. He's a narcissist. He can't see past himself. And his spirit is going to begin to show more and more as the story develops. Let's go.
Then says Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and in the morning speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon.
Wicked.
Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet, and the king, and the thing pleased Haman, and he caused a gallows.
You see, when you wicked, you breed wicked people around you. Right? So when you wicked, you breed wickedness around you. So your wife can't tell you, a good wife will go, are you serious? Like,
let that go.
You've been invited to the queen's banquet, just you and the king, and you thinking about Mordecai? You need to go enjoy yourself and leave that man alone. But that dude, she telling him, oh, build a gallows and hang him on it. She wicked. But he bred that. He bred wicked people, little wickedly people around him. That's what he bred. Because a good wife is going to be, you know, when you got a good wife, you be hot going through the roof, and she be like, you need to calm down. Just calm down. You don't need, your pressure gonna go up. You're not even speaking right. You taking it out on the children. Can you just calm down for a second and think about what you're saying? But that's not what she did. She added more fuel to the fire. Let us go.
Chapter 6. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records.
So now we see the Most High all in this. He can't sleep. He twisted and turning. On that same night, the night before the banquet, you know what I mean? He twisting and turning. He can't think. He can't sleep. He got whatever, insomnia, whatever's going on with him. Let's go.
He commanded to bring the book of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king.
Right? So he said, read the books of the records of the chronicles of things that happened, so I could recall some of this stuff. Let's go.
And it was found written that Mordecai had told of BINAH and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, of those that kept the door, who had sought to lay hands on the king.
Remember earlier that there were some people that sought his life? So he read that, and it was like, oh, okay, let's go.
And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this?
So yeah, what has been done for Mordecai for saving my life? Let's go.
Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him.
So now we begin to see the hand of the Most High God working through this history. Right? Although his name is not mentioned, we see him in this.
Right.
Let us go.
And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outer court of the king's house to speak unto the king, to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him.
So yeah, he coming to tell the king, yeah, I want to hang Mordecai. But let's see what happens.
And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. Right. And the king said, let him come in.
The king told him, he told the servant, tell Haman, I said, come in to me. Let's go.
So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?
Right.
Now Haman said in his heart, whom would the king delight to honor besides myself?
A narcissist. Who else would he want to honor but me? Who else would he want to give an award or a reward to but me? There's no one There's nobody else that he could do that to. Now, he just elevated you to be his right-hand man. The queen has invited you to a banquet, but you can't see past yourself.
No.
In his mind, he said, who else would he want to honor but me? So let's see what's really on his mind. Let's read it.
And Haman said unto the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let royal apparel be bought which the king useth to wear.
Said, listen, for the man which the king wants to honor, get some royal apparel, some robes that the king used to wear. Some beautiful robes. Let's go.
And the horse that the king rideth upon.
One of the king's horses. Let's go.
And on whose head a crown royal was set.
Listen, put a crown royal on this person. Let's go.
And let the apparel and the horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes.
Give it to one of the king's most noble princes.
That they may array the man therewith whom the king delights to honor.
This prince has to put all this stuff on this person. Put on the robe, put on the crown, and do all this stuff. Dress the person up. Let's go.
And cause him to ride on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be to the man whom the king delighteth to honor.
Thus shall it be to the man who the king delighteth to honor. So he wants to, because he thinks that this is going to come on him, he wants to embarrass somebody else, because that's his ego and that's his narcissism that's telling him, I'm going to embarrass somebody else. So my ego is driving me to do all these things in order so that I can embarrass somebody else and so that I could really look like what I really want to be, which is king. That's the reality of Haman. He's wicked. This is true wickedness right here. Let us go.
Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do so even to Mordecai the Judite.
Oh my goodness, this is the part of the story where, you know, in the movie should go boom, boom, boom. This is the climax, right? Because now we have the person that's the protagonist and the antagonist, and now it's that moment like, oh my goodness, the winds are changing.
Right.
Because at one moment you come in to kill this man, but now you got to do everything that you said out of your mouth, and you got to bestow it upon this man. And let's see what he does.
And do so to Mordecai the Judite that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken.
Said, let nothing fail of what you've spoken. That means put the crown on him, put the robe on him, go on horseback. Said, thus shall it be done to any who thus and thus and thus to the king. You got to do all of this. Let's go.
Then took Haman the apparel and the horse and arrayed Mordecai, and caused him to ride through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor.
So he had to ride and said, thus shall it be done. And all the people that knew the rift that was going on, it was like, goodness gracious, what's going on here? Because, you know, all the gas masters at the beginning that was coming back and forth with the messages that knew the internal conflict, because the king really didn't know the internal conflict. But these people knew. They said, oh boy, something is happening here. Something is wrong. And this is the Most High God turning the wheels. The wheels are turning. Let us go.
And Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman hastened to his house, mourning and having his head covered.
He jumping and crying, and look at what happened there.
And Haman recounted unto Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai, before whom thou hast begun to fall, be of the seed of the Hebrews, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him.
Oh, that's the wisest thing they told him. That's right. Said, if that happened to you, that means that your fall has begun. And your end is near, my boy. Let's go.
While they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet.
He don't have a time to breathe. You just did this, you went home crying, and now the king's chamberlain said, yo, Esther's banquet, let's go.
Yep.
Let's go.
Chapter 7. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, whatever thy petition, Queen Esther, it shall be granted thee, and whatever thy request, even to half of the kingdom, it shall be performed. So
you know what they say, what they call it, Murphy's Law? Anything that can't go wrong will go wrong, right? This is what's happening now. It's like everywhere he turned, it's like he thinking he going, all right, that happened. I'll get over my embarrassment. At least I'm here with the king and with Esther. We're going to drink some wine and we're going to be good. And I got to look forward to the annihilation of these people anyway. Let's go.
Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my peace. For the adversary is not worthy that the king be in damage.
She said, look, just spare my life, king. She said, that's my petition and my request. She said, if we had just been sold into bondage, she said, I would have accepted it. She said, but just spare my life. So now the king is like, what are you talking about? What hold on, run this story by me again. Explain to me what's going on, because I don't know what you're talking about. Let's go.
Then spoke the king of Ahasuerus and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that does presume in his heart to do so?
He said, who got the gall to think that they're going to put their hands on you? Who is he, and where is he, so I could take his head off? Let's go.
And Esther said, An adversary and an enemy, even this wicked Haman.
Wicked Haman. You wicked. An adversary and an enemy. They call him a shaitan in Hebrew. He's an adversary. This wicked Haman. And now let's see what Haman does, because his cod, the boy, that thing is tightening up like this, and he's like, oh, what's going on here? This is not going good. Let's go.
Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman remained to make request for his life to Esther the queen. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king.
Man, he sobered up quick a couple of times. Remember, he was banquet of wine with Vashti. She refused to come. He had to sober up. Now this, my right-hand man, I got to sober up. So he took a step out into the garden to try to get some air, to try to process exactly what's going on. And let's go.
Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the couch whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he even force the queen before me in the house?
The visuals was all wrong. He stepped out, and Esther's sitting by the couch, and Haman is by her. Oh, good, please, Esther, please. And he see the visuals. He said, hold on. First you want to kill her, and now you want to force yourself on her. You know, the Most High God bring these thoughts to you. Now you want to force yourself on her? What do they say next?
As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face.
Oh man, they just like when you go into when they're about ready to behead you, back in the days in England, they'll put a bag over your head. Shame. No, my boy, you just stay quiet. Shut up. Let us put this bag over your head. Yeah, that's what they used to do. Football teams back in the days, when the team was really bad, the fans used to come out with bags over their heads, brown bags. With the eyes cut out in the nose to show that they was ashamed of the team. So now we ashamed of you, Haman. Let's put this bag over your head because you messed up, my boy. You know, like my man Bill Duke said in Menace to Society. You know you done messed up, right? You know you done messed up. Let's go.
Then said Harbona, one of the chamberlains that were before the king, Behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who spoke good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. And the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath assuaged.
Oh, then the king was easy. They hung him because the wickedness that he sought to do to Israel came back on him. So what we understand is that we have to put our trust in the Creator. And when we put our trust in the Creator, you see, Esther was hesitant as to go in and to make her petition and to do what she had to do. But you have to make that sacrifice. You have to make that sacrifice. You have to put forth that effort. And this is what Esther showed in the sight of all the people. And in the sight of adversity, she showed herself to be strong. So it shows that our women play an integral part in our history. And Esther was a very important part of our history. Let us go.
Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Judite enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman.
So now, he's the right-hand man of the king. Let's go.
And Esther spoke yet again before the king and fell down at his feet and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman, the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Judites. Then the king held out to Esther the golden scepter. So Esther arose and stood before the king.
She used to this thing now, running before the king. Let's go.
And she said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Judites that are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come into my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my king?
So she's making a petition to reverse that edict that was made about destroying the children of Israel. Let us go.
Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Hebrew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him that they hate, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Judites. Write ye also concerning the Judites as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month Siwan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Judites, even to the satraps and the governors and the princes of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, according to the Judites, according to their writing, and according to their language.
So what basically the king told her is, look, whatever was sealed with the king's ring is law.
Right.
Right? I cannot reverse that. But I'm going to give you the authority and the power to write an amendment or a letter that goes over this letter, where whatever is right in your mind that you should do for these people to be able to defend themselves or to do whatever they have to do to stay alive. But I cannot reverse the first edict that was made through Haman, because my seal is on it, and we run things a certain way. So this is the way that it has to be. So I'm going to give you the power to make an amendment or to do whatever you have to do in order to, so that you could be safe and you could defend yourselves. Let us go.
And they wrote in the name of the king Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback riding on swift steeds that were used in the king's service, bred of the stud, that the king had granted the Judites that were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, to destroy and to slay, and to cause to perish all the forces of the people and province that would assault them, their little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey, upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. On the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, that all the people have a right to defend themselves, all the children of Israel. You have a right to pick up weapons and defend yourself against anyone that comes for your head, because there's a bounty on the Israelite head. You know that. Right.
And if somebody brings the Israelite head back, they're going to collect on that bounty.
That's right.
But now the Israelites have an opportunity to defend themselves. Let us go.
The copy of the writing to be given out for decree in every province was to be published unto all the peoples, and that the Judites should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon swift steeds that were used in the king's service went out, being hastened and pressed on by the King's Commandment, and the decree was given out in Shushan.
So this is why the royal road was important, because this stuff could get out in 7 days, when it was supposed to be a 3-month journey on foot, rather than it be a 3-month journey on foot, 90 days. It was basically a 7-day journey, and then that's on the royal road. But then all the neighboring cities and everything, you had to give it a chance to spread. Right, so this was on the 3rd month. It was supposed to be on the 12th month when the execution of the Israelites is supposed to be. So you have to give it enough time so that the message could circulate to Israel, and so that all the Israelites will know that, listen, you have a right to defend yourselves. Let us go.
And Mordecai went forth from the presence of the king in the royal apparel of blue and white, and with the great crown of gold, and with the robe of fine linen and purple, in the city of Shushan shouted and was glad. The Judites had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment had his decree came, the Judites had gladness and joy, a feast and a good day. And many from among the peoples of the land became Judites, for the fear of the Judites was fallen upon.
You hear that? So many became Israelites. They said, we're going to do what y'all do because y'all got favor with God. So that's how you got Persian Jews today.
Right.
You got Persian Jews because during that time we was in there. Some of us stayed there, but a lot of the people converted. And they still there.
Right.
Observing the law, statutes, and commandments. Let us go. So wherever we go, we're supposed to be a positive influence.
Right. A light to the nations.
A light to the nations. Let us go.
Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, which is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the King's Commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Judites hoped to have rule over them, whereas it was turned to the contrary, that the Hebrews had rule over them that hated them, the Judites gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them. For the fear of them was fallen upon all the peoples, and all the princes of the provinces, and the satraps, and the governors, and they that did the king's business helped the Judites, because the fear of Mordecai was fallen upon them.
The fear of Mordecai. Mordecai was running things now. So people helped the Israelites in order so that they would have the victory, because people was going to collect on them heads. I'm telling people, I got a couple of neighbors over here. Let me see, about 10 of them in that house. I got them. But people reinforced themselves. They came together and they defended themselves. Let's go.
For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went forth throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. And the Judites smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and with slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto them that hated them. And in Shushan the castle the Judites slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshandata, and Dalphon, and Aspata, and Parata, and Adalia, and Aridata, and Parmashta, and Arisa, and Arida, and Vasata, the 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hamidata, the Hebrews' enemies slew they, but on the spoil they laid not their hand.
So right here it says the name Mordecai, right? What is the meaning of his name? I think you got it over there. Let me see. Of Marduk or something like that. I think that's his name. Mordecai. Should be right at the top. One of the names at the top, right?
Mordecai, little man, mannequin of Merodach, right. Dedicated to Mars, crushed by rebellion, contrition.
Right. So dedicated. So this is in Persian history. The name Mordecai is often uncertain. Is of uncertain origin, but is considered identical to the name Marduka or Marduku, which is Akkadian, attested as the name of officials in Persian court and 30 texts, Persepolis administrative archives from the period of Xerxes I, which is Ahasuerus, and his father Darius, and may refer to up to 4 individuals, one of which might have served as the prototype for the Bible, Mordecai. So it shows you that he was a man of great honor, great stature. Go back to the Tanakh.
Verse 11. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan the castle was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Judites have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the castle. And the 10 sons of Haman, the 10 sons of Haman, what then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now whatever thy petition, it shall be granted thee. And whatever thy request further, it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Judites that are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and that Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given out in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons.
They hanged Haman's 10 sons. Let's go.
And the Judites that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day of the month Adar, and slew 300 men in Shushan, but on the spoil they laid not their hand. And the other Judites that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of them that hated them 75,000. But on the spoil they laid not their hand.
Because it wasn't about gaining spoils. It was about preservation of life. They didn't want spoils. They didn't want the spoils of what you would consider war, because it was more about preservation of life rather than taking someone's spoil.
Right.
So they fought to defend themselves and to stay alive rather than to fight. And most wars are done in those times for gain. You know, you gain property, you gain wealth, but this wasn't for that. It was for preservation of life. And that's what was happening at this point. That's why they didn't take the spoil. Let us go.
On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same, they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Judites that were in Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, And on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore do the Judites of the villages that dwell in the unwalled towns make that the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another.
That's what we do. That's why we recognize the day, but it's not a holy day. It's not a day appointed by God. It's not a day that you got to stay out of work, or it's not a day that you don't have to go to school. But we acknowledge the day. We acknowledge the day, and we acknowledge it because our forefathers went through a struggle during that time. And it's a great history. Finish it out, my brother.
And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Judites that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to enjoin them that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly, the days wherein the Judites had rest from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to gladness, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Judites took upon them to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman the son of Ammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Judites, had devised against the Judites to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is the lot, to discomfit them and to destroy them.
So that's where the name for the day comes from. Purim, Pur, from the lot, like casting the lots to see where it will fall on Israel and what day Israel was supposed to be destroyed. So a day that was supposed to be a great day of destruction for us became a day of happiness and joy. And that's why we celebrate it. Read on.
But when she came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he had devised against the Judites, should be returned upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows.
Now go to chapter 10, because this is just recalling the
chapter 10.
Right, finish.
And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power, of his might, and the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, how the king advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of the Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Hebrew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Judites, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So some of the history is preserved, like we see that Mordecai's name is preserved. But what happened in later in history is that there was a war between and if you got I think I got the notes up there from last year, and if not, I'm gonna put it on the description later. But there was a war that the Greeks had with the Persians, right, with Ahasuerus. And that's where the whole story of the 300, you ever see the movie 300? So this is the king of Persia that actually Xerxes or Ahasuerus was actually that king, right? But they have him looking like a freak in the movie. You know, bald head, looking like a weirdo with eyeliner. The Persian kings didn't, the Persian kings didn't dress like that. And didn't look like that. They looked very noble. Right. They were, when you look at the depictions of Persian kings, they had beards, long hair. They had like curly, like you see the beards is like curly with hair, with crowns on their heads, and with robes and scepters. They didn't look like that freak they put in that movie. No, they didn't look like that. They didn't look like that. And what happened in that battle is
the battle of Thermopylae.
Yeah, Thermopylae. Can you read that real quick? This is the Battle of Thermopylae.
The Battle of Thermopylae was the first between the Persians and the Greeks during the Persian invasion of 480 to 479 BC.
Right.
The Greek force was very small, but was determined to make a stand against the huge Persian army. Right. All of Greece was in fear, knowing that the army of the Persian king Xerxes had begun its invasion of Greece.
So Greece in this time was broken up into different states. Macedon, Sparta, all these different states. They knew they were all Greeks, right? But you're not gonna rule over me. I got my own king. I got my own king. Right. So the Sparta was the southern part of Greece. Macedonia was the extreme the northern part. That's where Alexander and Philip and his father come from. Right? Let us go.
Already the Thessalians had gone over to the Persian side, but some Greek cities had come together and forgotten their usual rivalry.
The Thessalians sold out the rest of their people and they went to the Persian side. Let's go.
Determining to stop the Persian invasion. These cities agreed that Sparta would lead the Greek army as her reputation in war was unmatched by any
Sparta
other Greek
was,
state.
they were great warriors. They were great warriors, so they said, y'all gonna go up first. Y'all gonna go represent all of us first. Let's go.
The Greeks had chosen to defend the narrow pass or gap between the mountains or central Greece and the sea called Thermopylae.
Thermopylae. So it was a narrow path, meaning that you could only go one way. It was like, it was so narrow that you couldn't, a great army couldn't go past it. Let us go.
This pass was part of the route into Greece from the north. Here the Greek force now waited, made up of only 300 Spartans under their king Leonidas and about 6,000 soldiers from other Greek cities.
Leonidas, what we hear in the history, what we see the movie, we see Leonidas in the movie. Let's go.
They faced a Persian army of perhaps 100,000 men.
100,000 men against 300. Let's go.
After the Persians arrived at that pass, several days crept by without battle beginning. Xerxes sent out a scout to find out what the Greek position was. The scout returned to the king, who was amazed by what he heard. And in front of a wall that blocked the pass, the 300 Spartans were combing their hair and exercising.
So they said the Spartans was working out, combing their hair, combing each other's hair, because you know they was little, you know, weird about that stuff too. You know, Greek custom was like that. So he said when Ahasuerus sends out a spy, said them guys is exercising and combing their hair, and they up against a wall. They like trapped. They trapped themselves off against a wall, but they was great strategists when it came to war. Let's go.
However, the king was warned not to misread this information.
He said, don't misread them. He said, don't sleep on them. Let's go.
The Spartans were preparing to fight unto the death and were men of great bravery.
These were men that were prepared to fight till the death and men of great bravery. There's nothing worse than somebody who's willing to give their lives in a fight, because he's going to go to all extent to win. He's going to go all out. Let's go.
Finally, after the nerve-wracking wait, the Persians launched their attack. The Greeks were defending the pass from behind the wall that blocked the path. They took it in turns to hold the front line and fought off wave after wave of attacking Persians.
So what the Greeks would do is they came up with this method. They would have these long lances or poles, right? And what they would do, they had their formations down so packed that when somebody pushed to the front, right, the other guys would come to the back, right, and get rest, and they'll keep pushing. When you coming up on them posts, boom, they'll impale you, and they'll come back. They'll boom, and it was called the phalanx. How do you call it? Formation, right? It was shaped like a phalanx. If you know what a phalanx is shaped like. That was their formation. That's where the strategy of war came from. Let's go.
In the narrow space, the Persians could not make use of their greater numbers, and the longer spears of the Greeks meant that they inflicted many casualties on the Persians.
So you trying to get close to them, but you can't. You got to get past those poles, right? And you couldn't touch them. You couldn't touch them. And when the valley of spears or whatever of arrows came, they had a formation for that. They covered them, just like in the movies. They cover themselves, they'll get back up, and all that exercise wasn't for nothing. That exercise was so that they could stay in shape and they could carry out these exercises of war. Let's go.
The Spartans also used a clever strategy to further overwhelm their enemy. They pretended to retreat so that the Persians chased after them, but would then turn upon the Persians and in the confusion kill many of the enemy.
So there was like a football line. You see how all them guys move just from signals? So they'll retreat like they running away, and then they'll stop on a dime, and then you run right into their spears, right into those poles. Let's go.
In this way, 2 days of battle passed. While with the Persians unable to defeat the much smaller armies of Greeks, the Persians had lost many men, but their luck was about to change.
The Persians lost many men to 300. So it's not in the, how they say it's not on in the size of the dog in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the dog. So then you be a little dog and you see, man, this guy gonna beat him because he's bigger, and the guy knock him out. That little dog tear him up. Let's go.
A Greek trader came to the Persian king with information of huge
Greek trader,
Above the pass of Thermopylae was another path that was known to local people only.
So this is a back road where you could get around these guys. Let's go.
It would allow the Persians to come secretly through the mountains and round behind the Greek army guarding the pass below. The Greeks would then be trapped with the Persians in front and behind them. As darkness fell, the Persian Greeks sent his best soldiers to take the secret path and so come up behind the Greeks. At dawn on the third day of battle, the Greeks discovered that they had been betrayed. Leonidas, the Spartan leader, chose to fight to the end, knowing that his men could never win this battle. He told the remaining Greek soldiers to flee whilst they could, but the Spartans would show their courage and fight on. They
fought till the death. So he told them, y'all could go back home, but they chose to stay there and die fighting. Let's go.
The Spartans withdrew to a hillock near the pass. Together with a few other Greek soldiers who had refused to leave, they fought the Persians with all their remaining strength. When their weapons broke, they fought with their hands and teeth, but the Persian soldiers vastly outnumbered them, and finally the Spartans were overwhelmed with a volley of arrows fired by the Persians.
And that's, keep going.
And so the Spartans and those other Greeks who fought to the death had lost the battle for Thermopylae. The Persian army could now march into central Greece, wreaking havoc and destruction, but also the Greeks had lost this battle. The great courage shown by the Spartans boosted the morale of other Greeks. They were not ready yet just to surrender to the Persians. After this battle, King Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, goes into Greece, pillages cities and villages, and in contrast to what Cyrus did when he invaded Babylon and offering them peace, he goes into the city of Athens in Greece and burns it down.
He burned Athens down to the ground, which is one of the main cities in Greece. Let's go.
Later he offers to rebuild Greece, but the Greeks refused.
The Greeks said, we don't want you rebuilding anything for us. Let's go.
This event was never forgotten by the Greeks.
The Greeks never forgot this in their history. And what happened?
And it probably was what pushed Alexander the Great to burn down Persepolis when he reached its gates in 330 BCE.
Persepolis was the great Persian city where they had all their great libraries, where they had all their great history, and all that was destroyed. They said Alexander went into a drunk stupor and said because of what they did to Athens, destroy it, burn it down to the ground. And then they say he woke up the next morning regretting it because he knew that there was a lot of history that was lost. So don't believe the movies, how they depict people. The Greeks got their behinds whipped in this battle. Eventually, they won the war because it was their time to rule. But in the battle, they got their butts whipped. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I hope that the Most High God will bless us all, that we've learned something today and picked up something today. I'm thankful to this great King for our lives. And at this time, I will say the blessing that the Most High God gave unto Moshe to give unto our Haron and his sons to bless the children of Yisrael. Hoping and praying that on the conclusion of this day, that the Most High God will look down upon each and every one of us and grant us a blessing. Hallelujah. Wadaber Yehovah El Moshe Lemor, Daber El Haron we El Benal Lemor, Ko Tabar Kuet Bene Yisrael Amor Lahem. And Yehovah spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto Aharon and unto his son, saying, on this wise he shall bless the children of Yisrael. Ye shall say unto them, Yivareka Yehovah Yishmareka, Yair Yehovah Panawaleka Wikuneka, Yisai Yehovah Panawaleka Yasemlaka Shalom. May Yehovah bless thee and keep thee. May Yehovah make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yehovah lift up his countenance upon thee and may he grant thee peace. Hallelujah. May the Most High God be with us, and we will return back at 5:45. That's good. 5:45. Hallelujah. Maybe 6. Let's make it 6. Right? 6 o'clock. 5:45 is good. 5:45. 5:45. Hallelujah. Eastern time.